God. Welcome everybody. This is the Glaziar Gamble podcast with another Marvel movie review this time around. No trailer breakdowns, no DC thing going on yet. We'll get there. But this time we saw Captain America and Brave New World, obviously, and it was very it's been divided on the internet, but for the most part I've seen a lot of positivity. So we're here today to talk to you about it, break it down, review it, tell you what we like, what we didn't like, what you might not like. Gonna avoid spoilers as much as possible, at least when it comes to plot. Minor spoilers here and there, but when it comes to plot overall, we're gonna probably avoid spoilers for the most part. Yeah, so what we've seen on the internet, I don't know what you've seen. You're obviously all our cookies are different, but all the stuff that I've seen has been a lot of I don't get why this is hated. I really enjoyed it, and that's confusing to me because I haven't seen hate.
Just like the Marvels, when the Marvels eventually came out.
Right.
Same exact thing.
Yeah, but not like Madam Web.
No.
Yeah,
no, Madam Web was.
But like, it's confusing to me because I haven't seen hate. Like the only hate I've seen is people saying, I don't get why this is being hated. I haven't seen the actual hate for it. So it's like, are you guys making this up? Because I've only seen positive stuff.
Sure.
We had
people are. I've seen a lot of posts that said this is what happens when Disney goes woke.
What was woke about it?
There's nothing woke about there being a black Captain America.
If you think this is woke, you're just racist. Like, just shut up.
Yeah, that is straight from the comics. Like, it's not woke at all.
You mean the comic strip where he picks up Cap's shield as he's talking to Steve, and Steve tells him, "You're Captain America now," and he's like, "Yes, I am." Like that comic strip where it's
that one is the exact one. Yeah.
It's woke. No, you just hate black people. You probably think Wakanda Forever is overrated and the first Black Panther was bad. And there's probably certain things you just can't figure out what you don't like about Ironheart, but it's not out yet. But there's just something about it you don't like.
Right.
Yeah, just people being dumb and racist, but which that's par for the course as of late for a lot of the American public. But I digress. I personally normally we like to, if we have anything wrong or we dislike, who doesn't love, the compliment sandwich, where you give them something good,
sure,
but then you give them what they work on and then you say something good again. But because, in my opinion, when we like had what we talked about it after we were talking in the theater, we kind of had very little to gripe on, but what we do have to gripe on is kind of a major point to this movie. The biggest problem with this movie is a major point in the movie. So when we say eventually when we give our final scores, it'd be like, man, you guys just talked about this movie glowingly and positively, and like at least one of us is going to say mostly positive things.
I don't really have anything negative to say about it. There's one kind of plot point that I didn't necessarily like, and then it was like two visual things that I didn't really like, and one of the visual things was kind of the overarching thing going into this. If you've done if you follow the movies and follow like news about Marvel products, you see that this specific movie, Brave New World, had to go through a ton of reshoots. Not as many like readjusting as Blade, but no, like Daredevil Born Again had to go through a couple, but like this one went through a ton, and so one of them was specifically because of that. One of my visual problems were strictly straight from that fact that it did have to go through reshoots, and then the one plot point and then one other visual thing. So like in hindsight, like that's very minor in the grand scope of the movie. So Yeah,
Yeah.
I
So
yeah.
because we're going to be more mainly positive, people might be shocked that our score at the end's not higher. But part of that is I went in with this movie with pretty low expectations. I think a lot of people why they're liking it so much is a large part of it is because it has low expectations. Similar to why I think the Marvels did poorly, partially because people hate women, but also because people went in with, oh, the first Marvel, Captain Marvel, made so much that this one's got to be just as good. And I think people went in with too high of expectations. I think a lot of people are going into this movie with really low expectations, and that's for sure what I did. And so, even if it's not as high of a score as you would expect, I still think this was a really good movie. But
Like
let's
we're also comparing it to Shang-Chi, and we're comparing it to No Way Home, and we're comparing it to these. Obviously, Shang-Chi was a pleasant surprise, but they put a lot into like Spider-Man No Way Home as well,
right.
comparatively to this movie. So,
And for those of you who aren't familiar, maybe new to the channel or the podcast, Shang-Chi, No Way
the eight
Home,
and a half, nine range,
I
like we
believe those are
were.
our two highest rated projects that we have given, or at least movies that we've reviewed. And then I believe either the first Black Panther was the next highest. I believe that's how they go in order for
Sure,
how we rank or how we've scored them out of 10. Um, I believe it goes No Way Home, Shang-Chi, and then Black Panther.
sure,
Personally, I'd put Loki season 1 and 2 combined in there. That would be my actual third.
sure.
But anyway, the one main thing, we'll start with what we didn't like because the rest was all good. But the big thing was the leader. Tim Blake Nelson, awesome actor. He's done such a variety of things, like whether it's a big role, a small role in Holes. Like his role there was really good in
Yeah,
like the Ballad of Buster Scruggs. He has his roles where he's very very good. He's got quite the
pretty sure he was
range.
in oh gosh, George Clooney,
He's in a lot, man.
uh, the Man of Constant Sorrows. They sing in there. Oh,
I'm not familiar. I
fuck, I
don't.
can't.
I've watched like 2 George Clooney movies, not a
My God, keep going. I gotta now. This is fucking bugging me.
Tim Blake Nelson. Oh brother, where art thou?
Yep, that's it. That's the
Yeah.
one. Yeah,
But yeah. So anyway, he's super good. Love. I think he's an incredible actor. Very talented. Great range. It wasn't his problem. He did nothing, in my opinion, where he
oh
ruined the
no,
role at all.
he
Like it wasn't anything in terms of an acting standpoint. I think it was pure direction and production that the leader fell short. Writing, product, all that.
I don't think. Yeah, I don't think there was any necessarily poor acting moments.
I don't think there
Um,
was any like really in the whole. I think honestly, shocking because of how much I've glowingly talked about him on this. I think the worst acting in this movie was Giancarlo Esposito.
sure.
There was a couple moments in him in
Yeah,
this as
and so that,
Sidewinder
and
where I was
then
like, this is not like that's not good. Like that's not
right,
enjoyable.
and you can also put that into reshoots, like put that into reshoots because he wasn't originally in the film, and then they brought him into the film, and then they put him into this part. So like
Right.
you
It
could also
it
put
felt
that on the
unnatural.
reshoot side of thing. Sure.
His part
Yeah.
his it was that was like I would say the person that stood out the least in terms of acting and like where I had moments where you felt like you were watching a movie as a part of being
Sure.
like I always say like the best movies you feel like you're in it. You forget that you're watching it. The parts
Sure.
where I felt like I was watching a movie was usually when he was on screen, so that was kind of what pulled me out. However, the military dude, I thought he did even though he was only in a few scenes, I thought he did like a
Sure.
really really good job.
Yeah. Yeah, and then you could say there were some moments with like the female lead that I didn't 100% care for, but you could also like put that onto reshoots because I know they had to change her character immensely.
They did have to change her a
So
lot, and like so I lied. There was a one negative thing I saw about that movie, and it was about her.
Yeah.
and they said that she was pointless and not needed. I disagree about that, but I think that was just somebody saying like they didn't like
Right,
her.
and
But
and you could also blame that to the reshoots.
right.
So it's
And I actually thought I didn't like her character, and then she grew on me by the end of it, so I was fine with
sure.
her. But
Sure.
back to the leader. In the comics, the leader has like a comically large brain head,
Right, Megamind-esque.
Megamind-esque, like super extremely smart, evil, and you know, plans on chaos and corruption and domination and all that. In this
Right.
movie, he was it was more just kind of like a more like if you tried to make a comic book character more realistic. He was more on like the realism morphed brain side, made him like green and one eye looked blind, and it was a little bit different take on it. But instead of being like that chaotic ruler leader, he
Right.
was like stealthy. Everything was behind the scenes. So we talked about this in the theater again, but it felt that muted style, that muted look of him matched the muted personality that they brought to the character. So it felt like a way different type of character than the comics.
Right.
But the character from the comics hits a lot better. And there were ways where you could have been more comic accurate with that character
Oh,
in this
100%.
movie. And it would have felt a lot more like there was a true bad
Right,
guy.
and I even think like you can if you did that other look and that other style for, like from the comics,
Mm-hmm.
you can use them in a majority of projects and still make it make sense.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but like this kind of subdued version is harder to use elsewhere. And so I agree. I think that if you did were a little bit more comic accurate, which also you could go blame reshoots for it, for everything, because you don't know what the actual story they originally wanted to tell was.
Yeah, we don't know what that
Um,
was, but this leader was muted for sure.
right. Yeah. Yeah. And there was one chance he could have said a hell of a punchline, but he didn't too. So
Yeah,
yeah.
they missed a few things with him. I think when your big fail, if you want to call it that, is with the villain, that's why it kind of affects your overall opinion of the movie so much. Like at least for me
Right.
personally too. Like the biggest problem I had with this movie is the fact that the villain didn't feel like a villain, and my image of what I expected the villain to be was not nearly what we got. So
Sure.
I think we got exactly what this version of the movie wanted. Like I think they portrayed exactly what they wanted from this version of Leader, but
Sure.
this version of Leader is not really that like it is we've you used I think you used this term when we were talking about Thunderbolts. You said you can't have so many one-off characters, especially one-off villains.
Right.
And this felt like that. Like the leader doesn't have to be this random one-off villain they can return, which he might with how everything went in the movie. It's not like he was killed. We'll get into that, but he felt like it's like why unless they had plan on having him come back and then his brain will be expanded and all that. Like he's gotten even smarter. Who
Yeah.
knows? But like this it felt like this one-off throwaway villain to establish our Captain America, and then we're never gonna see him again.
Sure.
Which you're kind of just wasting a good character in that point. So it's weird. There was a moment in at the end in which the leader um, randomly turns himself in. Again, this is not a like plot spoiler because it has no effect on what he did. That's literally how bad of an impact it has. Is he turns himself in after monologuing, and then after doing that turn himself in monologue, he still does what he could have done without turning himself in.
Right. And
Um,
been out on the run.
yeah, he
Like,
could have been
yeah.
on, but instead he plays this audio tape after turning it made no sense for him to turn himself in, especially to
Correct.
Captain America, where he gave Cap a chance to stop what he was planning on doing, when he could have done what he did overtly and it would have caused more like it was,
Yeah.
so the
It's
movie can happen. Like
questionable. Right.
it was a very weird decision. And so again, back to leader, like the villain making poor decisions, even though he's supposed to be like the most, everything is a
Yeah,
calculated
he's
probability standpoint.
right.
Everything I do is because this is how it's going to lead to success. Then that person would not have turned himself
My
in that way.
plans, my exact plan has a what, probably 95% chance for success
Right.
if he gets turned in or if he doesn't get turned in. So like that doesn't change the probability
Mm-hmm. If anything,
all that much.
you're telling me that the likelihood of releasing Red Hulk and causing the damage that he wanted to cause was better off if he turned himself in than if he would have gotten him to do that and still be out and about and able to run his own experiments and do all that. Like, no, he'd rather rot in jail.
Right.
That's a higher probability of a better life for
Right.
him. That just doesn't make any sense. Like, and now it's not like he's going to jail. He's going to be brought
He's stuck on the
somewhere.
raft. Yeah.
Right. He's going to be, yeah, it's so,
He's stuck on the
so
raft.
stupid. All of the things where I genuinely like disliked deal with the leader. I tried to, I think the best way for me to rationalize the leader is saying like, these are not the comics. The movies are not the comics. And that's also a big
Right.
issue that most viewers, especially Marvel fans, have with all of the movies is like, this isn't the comics. These are supposed to be a new take on familiar characters.
Right. And it shouldn't be. You can take inspiration from those things, but
Right.
everything should be slightly different.
Just like
it
live
should.
action Disney remakes. The terrible ones are all the one like the shot for shot. Who cares to see a shot for shot remake of anything? That's so weird
Right.
to me. I want to tell me something new. It might be a familiar character, but show me something new, which they did. It's just they seemed to not give us what they originally planned, so the reshoots felt like we know it was noticeable that this was not what they wanted. The goal after those reshoots was, how do we get to Captain America establishing? I'll give you 5 seconds for anybody watching, listening. Spoiler alert in 3, 2, 1. Captain America establishing the new Avengers. It's probably what it's going to be, is like the new Avengers. But yeah, it was all leader. You mentioned that it was all visual. Is the other visual problem you had was that the Red Hulk thing?
The other visual, I thought Red Hulk looked amazing.
I thought Red Hulk looked
Red
amazing as
Hulk
well.
looked great. I thought he looked great the entire way through. There was no bad CGI with him, like
including the action scene, the fight scene.
Yeah, the fight scenes were great. The only visual I had was that really bad green screen that you could definitely tell at the end. But I also chalked that one up to the reshoots.
Sure.
I'm sure there was a different line that wanted to be said, and they couldn't get in that scenery or put that much into it, and so they green screened it, and you could tell. But yeah, that was my other visual. So the first part would have been like the leader and his look, the subdued look for him, which was my biggest gripe with it, and then that obvious green screen, but that doesn't affect much. It's just that was one thing I chalk up to the reshoots. And anything regarding a reshoot, like that really doesn't matter to me. You know what I mean? So
I would agree. And we were talking about with the leader, there was they took liberties with the character to give us something new. Red Hulk in the comics, we've talked about this in previous episodes regarding this, when this movie was like getting talked about and teased and all that, was Red Hulk in the comics is so hot. Like when he walks through the street, the cars around him melt.
Right.
Like that's how hot his skin runs. I wasn't sure if they were going to do that until like during his transformation, the clothes were like burning off.
And there was like everything he touched was like burning.
Yeah,
like, it was burning.
He reached
right?
into a car and ignited the gasoline in it, and it lit on fire.
Sure. Right.
But that was constant in the comics, as opposed to this version. It was only when he was out of control with his anger. Like, he could still
Right.
be angry, but as long as he was in control of his anger, the heat went away.
Right.
There was a couple moments during the fight scene in which the blossom, the petals, go across his skin and like instantly fizzle away. They burn off. And I remember thinking during the scenes, like, that is so cool. Like,
Right.
they took the time to go, like, these individual petals, we want to keep showing how hot he is. Make sure you see, like, when he reaches into the car, the gasoline ignites, when the petals hit him. But then when they talk him down, the petal lands in his hand and it doesn't melt. And I remember, and that's when I was like, so that's how this character is different.
Right.
Is like, oh, so this guy isn't hot all the time. That feels really like controlled and natural, as opposed to they told us that this Red Hulk was created without him knowing that he was going to become a Hulk.
Yeah, and so I mean, yeah, to all those people, we gave that spoiler warning back, so now we can feel free to talk about whatever. That was another issue I had, just with the Red Hulk in general. Like the first time Hulk, hulked out,
Mm-hmm.
he couldn't control himself, and so like in this instance, like he should have zero control.
Especially
Over
considering
anything.
before he was a Hulk, he had no control over his own emotions.
Yeah, he had an anger issues.
Yeah.
And so now you're adding this anger issues in with Red Hulk, and getting exposed, and like the gamma, like the way it was all resolved was like, okay, like
The power
I
of friendship.
Yeah, like I guess. I mean, like I guess for the movie's sake, but like,
Which again, zero villain.
right.
There was because you knew it was you saw where it was going. You saw he was about to get talked down. You were like, oh, there is zero threat to Captain America throughout this whole movie.
Yeah.
The leader's not a threat. Hulk's not a threat. The military potential war is not a threat because he's handling it all by himself. It never felt like there was a threat.
The only threat was to his sidekick, which they very quickly were like, he'll be all right. Okay,
He'll be okay. Don't worry about it.
Good. So,
but we said all that, but outside of nitpicking about the flower petals, every single thing that I disliked about this movie has a reason. Reshoots, the needing to retcon to provide a new version of a character so that it fits the story you're going.
So that Captain America can beat Hulk.
Yep.
Beat Red Hulk, yeah.
While watching it, I'm probably just gonna be positive the rest of this for those of you still here, but I'm gonna say something crazy, ridiculous here that is consistent with what I've been saying. So part of it is to try to prove myself right.
Sure.
I said that this movie was going to be like the original Hulk, and that it's going to be like, this is going to be Hulk Iron Man. We're about to get the visual start of the MCU is going to feel like Fantastic Four when it was really this.
Sure.
This next version, this Avengers 2.0, this new Avengers, if you will, starts now. Just like it started with Hulk, but everybody always thinks Iron Man. It starts now, but they're going to think Fantastic Four.
Sure.
While I was watching this movie, I had so much fun and enjoyed it so much. I had way more Iron Man vibes than Hulk.
Sure.
Obviously, this is not the popular opinion, but I think the very first Iron Man is dated and doesn't hold up. People say it's one of the best.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah. Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you, but this is something I was talking about all week with people at work. So all the people that like do trash this movie or gave it whatever, like the critics that are giving it like a 50, for instance, or whatever the hell.
Fans are giving it in the 80s.
Those same people think that Marvel, the Infinity Saga, is flawless.
Right.
And that is not the case. The first two Thors sucked.
Yeah.
Captain America: The First Avenger was good, but it's not. I think it's very comparable to this movie. Um, the first Captain America.
I would agree.
I think Civil War and Winter Soldier beat it from an overarching standpoint, but then also this Captain America made more money than Winter Soldier, so people obviously really liked it. And then the first three Iron Mans are, I mean, like the Iron Man was the start of the MCU, and so like you said, it's dated.
Iron Man 2
And
and 3 are not
right,
good.
exactly, comparatively, right?
This
So
movie was
like,
better than both of those Iron Man.
right, like there's a handful of movies that are better, and this movie is better than the Incredible Hulk.
Absolutely.
So like people who say like this that the Infinity Saga is flawless, it's like you're in your mind you're comparing Infinity War and Endgame to all the movies that have come since then,
The Infinity
and that's not
Saga
fair.
was not flawless. Infinity
Right.
War and Endgame were incredible.
Yeah, right. And so like now you have to compare those and compare this saga
And the
with
first
Doomsday and
Avengers
Secret
movie as
War.
well was
Right.
very, very
Right.
good.
Right. And like and so you have to compare Doomsday and Secret Wars with that.
Correct. Those
So
is when you compare this, you should be comparing to Iron Man 1, 2, 3, Thor 1, 2, Captain America 1,
the
2,
Incredible
3,
Hulk.
Incredible Hulk. And when you start comparing this movie with those movies, it is higher than the middle.
Right.
This is a better
It
than
is.
this is a better than average movie when it comes to the early MCU. Um, I would say right up there with Captain America 1, Iron Man 1. This movie is like very similar to me in terms of enjoyment level. And I caught myself while I was at work thinking about how I want to go see it again. I don't often go see movies multiple times in theaters, but I would love to go see this movie again. I laughed a couple times. I don't think it was, I've said this before, herder action is so boring to me. And this movie was not just herder action, blah, blah,
Oh, I
blah.
thought all the visuals that we said were kind of lackluster. There was the opposite where the visuals were incredible. Basically, anytime they're flying,
Yeah. Yep.
flawless. Like when they're flying around Tiamat, and that's I mean, if at this point that's not
It
a
was,
spoiler
it
anyway.
was in the
You've seen it in the
poster.
trailer, right? And so like they're flying around Tiamat, and like that was sick. Like you see how big Tiamat is
Yeah.
in correlation to them. And
When
then
Tiamat's wrinkle in his finger is bigger than Cap.
yeah, like they can fly through the grooves and stuff. Yeah, so I mean, like from a standpoint of like those flying visuals, great, and
Mm-hmm.
then anything with Red Hulk was great too.
Because just
Even
like
the
the older MCU movies, this felt like a well-made movie with superheroes in it, not a superhero movie while trying to fit a normal storyline.
I also think that outside of they did a really good job of showing that Sam Wilson is not a super soldier.
I
Like
thought, yeah.
he would get into fist fights and he'd get hit around a little bit, but then like his expertise would come in
Mm-hmm.
and he'd be able to tackle the situation. But like whereas Cap would get punched and he won't fall down, Sam Wilson getting punched, like he's gonna recoil a little bit. So I thought they did a really good job of showing that like he is still struggling. He was still struggling with the fact that like shit, like maybe I should have took the super soldier serum.
Yeah,
He
he mentions
references
it like
that.
2 times during the movie, including having a conversation with Bucky about it.
Yeah, right. And so like it's showing that he is more human rather than a superhero, but he's still a superhero.
Yeah,
So
I'm.
I thought they did a great job with that
Oh,
too.
it
So
was so good. Like the flight scenes. So one of the guys that I listen to that talks about Marvel movies, he's almost always like positive, similar to us. And he
sure,
was kind of crapping on this movie a little bit. It was Max was kind
sure.
of like he was kind of crapping on this, saying that it was cliched. That uh, hold on, I don't know if we're gonna do it. Like he said
Mm,
that the lines were cliched, and I was like, if you are starting to dislike a movie, especially like if you watch any show, and this is the same guy that watches reality TV, by the way,
Sure.
but you watch any show, any movie, and you say there's too many cliched things, you probably should stop watching movies, because if you start looking for what's cliche, anytime they fade to black or do a certain type of transition, you can either say awesome or you can say cliched, stupid.
Sure.
Like, you can view it however you want to view it. And I thought, yes, there were some cliched moments, but they fit the movie. So go with what works
And
because it's
even if they're
cool.
centered around Joaquin Torres, like that's his character too.
He's kind
Like,
of just what he is. Yeah.
yeah,
But like
Joaquin Torres' character.
the flight scene where they're fighting in like the Japanese versus the American pilots, that scene had the most, like, I could feel my heart rate going up, had the most like energy going through for the whole movie, in my opinion. Best action scene throughout it. And on top of it, had sick visuals. And that was one of the things he was talking about, had some like cliched moments. I was like, you better have hated Top Gun then, especially like the new one. Like,
Yeah.
if you replaced Cap with just a fighter jet and he was doing certain moves as like a fighter jet, it would feel super cool, very similar. Like, it was so awesome to watch him doing those things in the air. I don't know. I thought this movie had some really, really fun visual aspects, but building this like background, we said this is going to be the thing with Thunderbolts, Daredevil, is we want to know the story and go ahead and sprinkle some action and superhero stuff throughout it, but we need some connection to our characters. That's where the MCU started failing, was here's what you want, right? We're going to give you crap. We're just going to give, like, this is, you guys like this crap, so we're going to give you extra crap. When it's like, no. We like the crap, but we only want it like a little bit. We still want you to make new and original movies. And it felt like we were starting anew. It felt like kind of like a rebirth of sense of sorts. It felt like the start of the next Avengers. It felt like this is new. This is now. Like, this is, every movie you see from here on out is building from here. Obviously, we'll have connections with Agatha, Loki, other shows like that, but this feels like the movie beginning of what we've been looking for, when, like, this is the Secret War saga now. And it felt like it. And I loved that.
So I just want to, since you talked about building the Avengers, the next movie we're going to get is Thunderbolts.
Mm-hmm.
So I think you're going to have these kind of different groups that are eventually going to join in to, Doomsday, if that's what it is, if that's where we kind of see a group up. And you're going to get this like group of Thunderbolts, and you're going to get this new Avengers, and you may get some young Avengers thrown in there too, depending on what they do. But those are kind of the three main groups. You're going to get the Fantastic Four in there.
X-Men.
Your X-Men eventually, probably after Secret Wars, you're going to get more of them.
Right.
But like, you've got all these groups, and so like building the Avengers standpoint, it's like what's next? Because like I don't think any of the Thunderbolts will join the Avengers. And I mean, they'll be there to help the Avengers. Like, they'll be there. But they're not like part of the Avengers, you know what I mean? So
sure. Yeah.
So like, I can see like after like the Thunderbolts is resolved, like Sam Wilson going to Bucky and being like, hey, like we need to get the band back together for like the next threat. Like, obviously, like, you guys stopped the threat in New York right now. Like, you stopped that, but like there's going to be a bigger threat. And then Bucky will be like, I can't, I'm a government official. Like, I can't just go do these things.
And they're going to have to try to make Yelena not feel like just the next Black Widow.
Right.
They're going to have to make it's like, you can't have her just strategizing like Scarlett Johansson was doing in the Avengers movie. You can't have her just kind of doing only espionage stuff. You kind of got to do stuff to make her feel new.
Right.
So I'm interested to see what they
do
do
that
there.
Where you can do that with her leading this group. with her leading this group because Natasha wasn't the leader. I mean, like in Endgame she was, but she was essentially like the face of the Avengers for America.
And part of why they made her the leader was to sacrifice her.
Yeah, and Cap wasn't there. Like Cap was hiding
Yeah.
because of the Sokovia Accords. Like so, yeah, I think you can make Elena that person and have her lead the Thunderbolts and have her kind of be that face. And you can even have her kind of team up with Kate Bishop or whatever you want to do with that. But yeah, it's like what's the next Avenger that Sam could add because he's got his boy, he's got his
we got the
sidekick,
new Hawkeye, not new Hawkeye, new Falcon.
Right, and that's it. Yeah. That's it.
Captain America and Falcon.
Yep. Great.
Obviously, they've made a couple Ant-Man references.
Yeah, they did make a couple of it, but
so I think eventually Ant-Man's coming in because clearly Falcon has an obsession with Ant-Man and wants to meet him. So Ant-Man eventually will be part of this new Avengers, or at least a consultant to the new Avengers.
Yeah, something
because
like that.
there has to be, now with how they've set it up, there has to be an interaction between Ant-Man and Falcon.
Yeah. And then I mean the next one is probably Sentry, maybe. That's
right.
it.
Because I mean you got the new Guardians, you've got
they're doing their thing.
Like everybody's like separated into their own groups. So you're either gonna have to like take people from those groups, or we're gonna start seeing some new people. Like, is Blade supposed to eventually be part of it?
Right.
Cersei, like what's the eventual plan here?
Yeah.
And I love that. I love that because we know what the groups are. We know like most of the Defenders are coming. You're not going to say like, oh, nope, sorry, just Daredevil is going to be part of the Avengers. The rest of the Defenders, you stay. Or just Iron Fist. Like, you can't do that. I would personally, I want to see Shang-Chi be part of the new Avengers.
Sure. And he's had conversation with, Wong and Bruce Banner and Captain Marvel. So,
are they going to have Strange and Clea be part of it?
Yeah, what are they doing?
Like, or are you going to make Ghost Rider this insane new member of the Avengers, which would be an awesome change to the character? That'd be really interesting to see. I think they have so many different options now. And that's another reason why I think people should really enjoy this movie is you could go any direction now that you wanted with Captain America, Anthony Mackie, Sam Wilson as your centerpiece, and it's locked in. And it feels like really good. My wife was smiling as I talked to her about this movie because she could tell how much I liked it, and she could tell like how I feel passionate about this movie. Like I feel like this it feels cleansing. Like it feels as though we were.
And you cleansed yourself during it too.
I did 3 times actually. Anthony Mackie's a handsome man. I'm sorry, but it was like it was an overrun, field where they kind of have to burn it down, and then when you burn down the field, new growth happens.
Right.
The MCU was kind of running amok a little bit, where it felt like they were losing control, kind of like the haphazard weeds. Like the weeds were getting out of control. You were still trying to grow a beautiful garden and plants in this field, but it wasn't really working because those weeds were kept getting in the way. And those weeds, in my opinion, are, Sony confusion, Deadpool's success, if we're being honest. Sure. And then, things like Captain Marvel or the Marvels, like you had the lack of success, all these end credit scenes that seem to be going nowhere.
Sure.
We now have a place we can go with those. You can bring Harry Styles in and make him show up, make him part of the new Avengers with Eros.
Yep.
Yeah, you could do that now. You could bring him in. Like you could have a lot of these characters that felt like they were never going to come back. It feels like you burned the field down, and let's separate these plots a little bit and start planting again. And I really love that feeling. Like I feel like I can nerd out again about the MCU, and we could make some ridiculous theory and it could come true, or we could
Right.
make some ridiculous theory, but it's not going to come true, but it's still fun and believable, and like the potential is just there. It's I don't know. I'm so happy about the way this movie turned out, and even though if I were to give this movie a score out of 10, um, I would give it probably a 7.5 tops.
Yeah. I mean, I'm in that 7 to 7.5 range too.
Yeah, I would say I think I could talk myself into giving it a 7.5, and if I'm being honest with myself, I'd probably give it a 7.
Sure.
Which I think, again, the way I was just talking about it, it feels like a movie I could watch over and over. You don't often feel that way unless a movie's like a 8, 9, 10, like one of the best movies you've ever seen. But this movie just has that feeling of good around it. And even though I'd give it a 7 out of 10, I very much enjoyed it. We always love giving our official score. So I think officially I would give this a 7.
Sure.
If
Yeah, I would give it a 7 as well.
I'll keep track of our,
Yeah.
movie review rankings.
Sure.
But I believe a 7 puts this movie, somewhere in that like 6th or 7th highest we've given a movie since we've started the podcast. I believe that means we put it higher than Venom,
Black Widow,
Venom 2 and 3. That's higher
Multiverse
than
of
Black
Madness.
Widow. That I believe we ended Multiverse of Madness with a 7.5. So we put this above Multiverse, or we put Multiverse of Madness, which at the time, we've had multiple videos since Multiverse of Madness came out where we have said we disagree with what we gave it. I think Multiverse of Madness was fun, and I think the Scarlet Witch hype was big, but I think a lot of people were riding high, and now when they are honest with themselves, it really had a lot of faults as a movie.
Right.
Benedict Cumberbatch and Elizabeth Olsen are both such good actors that they can kind of take away. I think people fell in love with the idea of, Mr. Fantastic, Black Bolt, like all these characters.
Yeah, the cameos. They got a little cameo crush.
Crazy. And so like, I think if you said this movie was just as good as Multiverse of Madness, if you said Multiverse of Madness is a 7, I think that's fair. But if you're saying these movies are basically equal, I think I'd rather watch this movie again.
Sure.
I love it. I thought it was super good. I don't have too much else to add to this. Our biggest issue was the leader himself. A couple choices that you can pretty much chalk up to reshoots and having an end goal and not knowing how to get there, in establishing Sam Wilson, but not knowing how to get there, especially after reshoots. And it's always hard for a movie when you can feel the reshoots affected it. It's kind of why we're at a point where we might be better off if Blade doesn't get made. Hate to say that, but if 5 reshoots or whatever it took to get this movie felt this way, what are the 75 reshoots of Blade gonna feel like?
Right.
Terrified. Maybe now that they've got like a new director, it'll go well. But I liked this movie, and it still felt rough because of those reshoots.
Yeah, it could have been better for sure.
I think,
and who knows what the story they wanted to do was.
Right. So, maybe Daredevil will give us a better picture of what Blade's reshoots will, like how the impact will be, because like they almost lost John Bernthal. Maybe we'll feel the impact. If we can watch that and not feel the impact of those, maybe we'll be like, okay, they know what they're doing here.
Yeah.
Which will then again make this movie feel even more like the Incredible Hulk from the previous phases.
Sure.
But yeah, I enjoyed this movie. I probably talked way too much this time around, but
that's all right.
I felt very passionate about this movie. I really enjoyed it, and I like sometimes giving recommendations. There was a trailer for a movie I had never heard of before this called Mickey 17.
Sure.
I
Yeah,
will be
Robert
going.
Pattinson.
I will be going to see that movie. I told my wife about it. We watched the trailer. She said she would go with me, and if nobody ends up wanting to go with me, it is a movie I will go see by myself if I have to. It looks awesome and unique, and I think it's the type of movie. If Robert Pattinson wasn't doing it, Daniel Radcliffe would be. He always does like the
Sure.
artistic,
Right.
interesting choice movies. It looks so unique. I can't wait to see it. So Mickey 17, I'm gonna go see that. And if I didn't go see Captain America in theaters, I probably never would have heard of it because they don't really advertise it that much. Can't wait. I want to go see that so bad. But yeah, appreciate you all so much. Thank you, especially if you made it this far. I apologize for rambling, and I thank you so much. And want to let you know you all look great today. GG.
GG.
Tres.